Foreign Minister, Chairman BOI, SAPM on CPEC Affairs, UNDP Resident Representative, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. On behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I extend a warm welcome to everyone gathered here for the launch of Pakistan SDG Investment Report 2021 on leveraging private investments for Pakistan's sustainable development. We're holding this event outdoors with scaled-down participation to adhere to the prevalent COVID SOPs. We would now proceed to the formal beginning of the event with the recitation from the Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Pakistan SDG Investment Report 2021 is an effort undertaken by the Government of Pakistan under the lead of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and in collaboration with UNDP and the Board of Investment to showcase Pakistan's business portfolio and potential for attracting national, regional and international private sector investments aligned with UN Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, I will briefly share with you what today's event entails. It will commence with the welcome remarks by Additional Secretary UN, Mr. Nabil Munir, followed by remarks of Resident Representative UNDP, Mr. Kunut Osby. After that, a short video will be played to depict SDG investment journey in Pakistan, followed by a presentation on the report by Mr. Haroon Sharif, UNDP Senior Advisor on Finance for Development, and then another short video on climate financing opportunities in Pakistan will be played. Thereafter, the Honorable Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Makhdoom Shah Mahmood Qureshi, would deliver the keynote address, followed by the official launch of the report, and then I invite all of you to also join us for refreshments after that. Foreign Secretary Mr. Suhail Mahmood has been unable to make it to the event today due to another commitment outside Pakistan, and therefore, now I invite Additional Secretary UN, Mr. Nabil Munir, to deliver the introductory remarks on his behalf.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Honorable Foreign Minister, Chairman BOI, SAPM on CPEC, UNDP Resident Representative, members of the Diplomatic Corps and Pakistan's development partners, private sector representatives, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all here in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on a beautiful sunny morning at the launch ceremony of Leveraging Private Investments for Pakistan's Sustainable Development, Pakistan's Investment Report 2021. In line with the Foreign Minister's vision of economic diplomacy, this report, the first of its kind, is aimed at highlighting Pakistan's efforts to leverage local and international private sector investments aligned with the United Nations Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. We are grateful to our partners, the Board of Investment, for its collaboration in the effort, the UNDP Pakistan for its invaluable technical assistance in publication of the report. Ladies and gentlemen, during 2021, we strategically positioned Pakistan for presentation and engagement on global and regional platforms for SDG-aligned investments. We presented an investments portfolio worth $2 billion to members of the Global Investors for Sustainable Development Alliance at the United Nations SDG investment fairs held virtually in New York in April and September last year. This report is a continuation of that effort to attract private sector in areas that correspond with Pakistan's sustainable development priorities and would be of benefit to both local and foreign investors. Ladies and gentlemen, we have gathered here today to present the key elements of the report to our development partners and other key stakeholders. It also reflects the ownership and commitment of the Government of Pakistan towards achieving the SDGs and the UN Agenda 2030 through finance for development ideation and strategic initiatives. I thank you all for your valuable time and participation in this event today. We hope that this initiative will lead to the development of new partnerships and strengthening of existing ones for Pakistan's sustainable and prosperous future. And this, we hope, will also prove beneficial for the investors. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your remarks. And now the resident representative of UNDP, Mr. Kunut Osby, is requested to deliver his remarks.
Honorable Foreign Minister of Pakistan, His Excellency Maktoum Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Additional Secretary UN, Mr. Nabil Munir, Chairman BOI Asfar Hussain, representatives of Pakistan's federal and provincial ministries and departments, Excellencies, members of the diplomatic corps, dignitaries, Pakistan's development partners, heads of UN agencies, members of civil society, academia and media, and their colleagues. Good morning and assalamu alaikum. I'm delighted to be part of welcoming you to the launch of the Leveraging Private Investments for Pakistan's Sustainable Development Pakistan SDG Investment Report 2021. I express my sincere gratitude to the Honorable Foreign Minister for his leadership and support of an excellent partnership between MOFA and UNDP, which has resulted in this unique presentation of Pakistan's SDG-aligned business case to mobilize development financing at global platforms. I also want to express a particular thanks to the lead author of the report and the former State Minister of Investment, Mr. Harun Sharif. Today, the global development financing sector is at a crossroads. Many developing countries are struggling to raise the level of financing needed to tackle and adapt to climate change, which is now widespread, rapid, and intensifying. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, their already thin finances have been stretched to a breaking point. The annual Sustainable Development Goals financing gap in developing countries is estimated to have increased by $1.7 trillion in 2020, a 70% rise on the pre-pandemic levels. Yet countries now have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to make smart, different choices that will spur decisive climate action, protect and restore our natural world, and bring clean, affordable energy to millions of people for the first time, for instance. The global potential for SDG investments is immense, given that aligning just 1% of the $379 trillion of total assets held by banks, institutional investors, and asset managers could be enough to fill the annual SDG financing gap. Therefore, the United Nations and its key partners are working even more closely together to help countries and communities to co-invest in that greener, more inclusive, and more sustainable future. The UN Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals are at the heart of Pakistan's Sustainable Development Agenda. To this end, the government has prioritized green economic recovery and innovative financing solutions as part of its post-COVID response plan to finance its development needs. Recognizing this need, UNDP has been advocating various mechanisms of financing for development to power its continued commitment to eradicate poverty and create pathways towards achieving the SDGs and working towards the Paris Agreement to ensure that we leave no one behind. In line with the Pakistan government's needs and priorities, UNDP is providing policy, advisory and technical assistance to finance for development and nature capital solutions. These include presenting Pakistan's first SDG investment portfolio at global investment platforms, developing the country's first ever SDG investor map, supporting the first policy discussions on structuring green bonds or nature performance bonds, and facilitating risk insurance financing solutions to secure disaster risk management programs in Pakistan. The report being launched here today illustrates our joint policy vision to mobilize and leverage Pakistan's development financing for COVID-19 recovery aligned with SDGs. It identifies priority and investment-ready development sectors such as climate change, energy, basic services of health and education, infrastructure, information technology, as well as mapping of flexible investment options to global investors. We are also advising the government to adopt a holistic institutional policy framework for financing for development by setting up an SDG project development facility supported by the government of Pakistan, UNDP, development partners, and the private sector. The facility proposal has already received high-level policy support from the government. Last year, the Honorable Prime Minister notified a high-level interministerial task force on multilateral development finance. With the Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Planning and Development, and Economic Affairs as its co-chairs, the task force has been tasked with the establishment and operation of the proposed facility. UNDP recognizes Pakistan's economic and development policy goals to foster regional trade, investment and connectivity between Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, Iran and the Central Asian republics as a vital component of regional security and stability. In this context, the proposed facility can also leverage Pakistan's national and regional opportunities to scale up SDG-aligned projects and investments, including cross-border initiatives. In the coming months, we will also assist Pakistan's efforts to launch its first-ever SDGs investor map, which will optimally position the country in regional and global markets to encourage private sector investments. On behalf of UNDP, I call on representatives from the government of Pakistan, development partners, and the private sector to come forward and support timely interventions to spur private sector investment, mobilize global private capital, and develop financial tools to generate green economic recovery and growth in Pakistan. In doing so, I hope you will find this report a useful tool and a roadmap for the partnered efforts. It is a joint effort to assist Pakistan to identify and prioritize investments that can help shift billions of dollars towards SDGs. Ultimately, the Pakistan SDG Investment Report 2021 is aimed at enabling Pakistan to make bold choices that will drive forward decisive efforts to protect and restore our faltering planet, and at the same time drive down poverty and inequalities while boosting human development, bringing tangible improvements to the daily lives of hundreds of thousands of people across the country. I thank you once again for your gracious presence today, as well as for your guidance and continued partnership in finding innovative development financing solutions to fulfill the promise of Agenda 2030 and leaving no one behind in Pakistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Taking this event forward, a short video on Pakistan's SDG investment journey will be played now.
mobilize the money needed by developing countries to recover from the COVID-induced recession and to restore them on the path to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030.
The private sector has a fundamental role to play if the world is to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The 2030 Agenda and the SDGs needs to become the global framework for private sectors to capture the benefits and trade-offs of sustainable development.
Massive investments, 100 trillion over the next 30 years, are needed in sustainable infrastructure, particularly in the developing countries. Both public and particularly private sector investment will need to be mobilized to ensure implementation of the SDGs.
As we know, globally and at the national level, financing of the Sustainable Development Goals can be a challenge. For that to succeed, we need to engage both the public and the private sector. To help mobilize the private sector in this work, UNDP has assisted the government of Pakistan in preparing an investment portfolio for the global SDG investment fair, and we've also assisted the government in preparing an SDG investment map. By these actions, we hope to help mobilize the private sector in building forward better in Pakistan.
Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to invite Mr. Haroon Sharif, UNDP Senior Advisor on Finance for Development, to enlighten us with a presentation on the report Leveraging Private Investments for Pakistan's Sustainable Development.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Honorable Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi Sahib, SFPM on CPEC, Chairman BOI, dignitaries, ambassadors, other diplomats, development partners, and members of private sector and media. Assalamu alaikum and good morning. It's my profound pleasure to be here today because we are launching a report which is actually more of leading a different way of thinking about development financing. development financing has emerged as the major channel, not the only one of the challenges, the major challenge for developing world after the COVID particularly, because the resource envelopes are shrinking, the demands are rising, there's a capital available in the private space, particularly institutional private space, where countries need to tap. This report, the time spent, I'm grateful to UNDP for giving this opportunity and creating space. This report, which I'm going to present shortly, actually captures, fits into at the right time that how could country like Pakistan do very practical steps to reach out to the capital resources globally with the help of multiple stakeholders. So next slide, please. So setting the macro context, basically what we have seen that Pakistan has shown a good recovery post-pandemic. And we basically from -1% after the rebasing of GDP, we are almost touching 5%. And then, the country's GDP is projected between 4 to 6% for next few years. But let me raise a question. Is that GDP enough for Pakistan? A country which is actually producing 2 million young entrants in the labor market every year. So the key question here is that unless we increase the investment to GDP ratio, our structure of economy is not going to produce higher GDPs which are sustainable. Where do we invest? That's what this report will talk about. So we have achieved a level of macroeconomic stability. Our foreign policy, as mentioned, is very clearly focusing on geoeconomics and economic diplomacy. I'm very pleased that when I was part of the government, Honorable Foreign Minister and I spoke about economic diplomacy, and that theme has been picked up very forcefully by him and other colleagues. We have also seen that Pakistan worked hard to improve the ease of doing business. The government of Pakistan, became among the top 10 reformers. Social sector investments come into the policy priorities of the Prime Minister, as we have seen in the video. It comes in the priority of the international agencies. But the key question this report will raise is, and which we have tried to address, that how can we diversify the portfolio of investment? Mr. Foreign Minister and distinguished participants, if we look at 30 years of Pakistan's development financing history, we basically rely on multilateral loans and taxpayers' money to finance development. There has been corporate social responsibilities and other initiatives. The countries which have moved up, in particularly Asia, they have raised the capital markets, institutional investors, endowment funds, social funds, impact investments. So widening the basket is what this report talks about. It doesn't say replace it, widen the basket, but for that, it's a very applied, focused analysis which offers tools to move forward. Next slide, please. So what we are talking about here is, as mentioned, first of its kind report. And Pakistan, basically what I want to highlight is, once you go through this report, there is almost $100 billion of investment opportunities in the areas to mitigate climate risks, in the areas of sustainable infrastructure, areas of sustainable agriculture, in the areas of technology. Standard Chartered actually has done a report which echoes this number, $96 billion worth of investments. So that's the opportunity which the country offers to the world, and I wanted to highlight in this report. Report offers, as I said, a strategic model. Now, there is an opportunity. We have been selling Pakistan's strategic location, investment opportunity, population for several years. But can we offer a very specific instrument how to go about it? This report talks about that instrument. So what I am very humbly, what we have recommended is that we do $1 to $2 billion of private investment instruments to demonstrate that development financing could be sustainable. It might not give very high yield, but that is what the market needs. If country grows, the markets grow. So Pakistan's financial sector is ready for it. What we need to do is what Knut said, that we need to set up a facility to structure Pakistan's project portfolios, which is ready for the market to look at it productively. I understand my friend Khalid Mansoor is doing it for Chinese investors, for commercial ventures. This is a quasi-commercial but a development agenda where we want to come in. I also basically want to highlight that in order to attract private capital, we do not only need a change of mindset, which, as I said, for years is relying on debt, and the debt sustainability is becoming a serious issue for Pakistan. And this report actually opens up avenues that how do we diversify our financing through a very dedicated facility, which is not expensive, but which will actually reach out to people for $1 to $2 billion investment. Next slide, please. I think pretty much these things have been said. I will go to the third and the second bullet. Pakistan needs 16% of GDP investments in sustainable infrastructure and SDGs to achieve the levels of emerging Asia and other countries. 16%. We are at the moment less than 2%. Now, where does that money come from? Do we continue with our traditional practices, or we do innovative financing deals and mechanism to raise that capital? At the moment, there are assets of global financial institutions and mutual funds and impact funds are almost 379 trillion. Now, even 1% of those assets can change the fate of development financing. But our country is ready for it. I can guarantee you that this $1 to $2 billion, half of this can actually be raised in Pakistan's financial markets. But are we ready for it? Can we structure the deals in a manner that private sector partners with the government? Or are we going to continue with our, business as usual? So I'm very pleased that this report will lead to a very specific SDG investment map. Already countries like Mexico, Indonesia, even Uzbekistan, they have raised money through these instruments very recently, hundreds of millions of dollars. Many countries are doing investor maps, including China and India. So I am very pleased, and thanks to UNDP, Foreign Office and other colleagues, that we are moving in that direction. Next slide, please. Already this message has been read by the Honorable Prime Minister, who has highlighted the need of sustainable infrastructure and the money which is to become. This report gives you the tools how to take that forward. That's what I'm again and again highlighting, that we need the how part very, very quickly. I would also like to mention that the Planning Commission has come up with almost $13 billion of portfolio of PSDP, which will be raised through private partnerships. But that is called PSDP Plus. I am just trying to say that do we have the skill sets to take it forward and structure projects accordingly? Next slide, please. Now, these are, when I looked at the Pakistan's policy framework over several years and now under the PTI government, the sectors which aligned with sustainable development goals directly are clean and green environment with modernizing infrastructure, digitization through capacity building and technology transfer, improving social services, inclusive growth, particularly through sustainable agriculture and social security, and small and medium enterprises. We have mentioned the sustainable development goals which Pakistan has signed off globally with the United Nations, which very rightly correspond to these policy priorities. Next slide. Now, what I'm trying to highlight here is that, the $2 billion portfolio of projects which were prepared by Board of Investment were presented to global investors through a UNDP platform, a UN platform in New York. there was huge interest in that by investors who are looking at, social impact investments. So we got very specific interest in renewable energy. We got interest in health systems, in even sustainable agriculture projects. But Your Excellencies, what I would like to highlight is that we have the demand side, we have the interest from investors. There is a missing middle. We need to structure transactions in a manner that these investors find it compatible with the global best practices. And that is what I will continue to highlight. I highlighted before when I was in the government and even in the World Bank and other agencies that unless and until we have the capability of structuring commercial transactions, all the interest in Pakistan will not translate into investments. And that is what we are proposing today, that how to structure it forward. Pakistan has presented these projects, as I have mentioned, and too specific. When I spoke to Finance Minister Shaukat Tareen, he was very kind. He has offered 2 transactions to start with. One transaction is a $500 million debt facility through a green sukuk or a bond, but he wants to set up a $500 million private equity fund for SDGs. And I think it's an excellent entry point because individual transactions are difficult, but if we can float these funds to carry forward, that will give a message to the world and investors that Pakistan is structuring seriously the way the rest of the world is doing. Foreign Office has a very critical role here to reach out to the pockets of capital across the globe. It is the sovereign wealth funds. I'm very pleased that Ambassador of Qatar is here. Qatar Investment Authority alone is $350 billion of sovereign investment fund. The Chinese, even a small province like Shandong, has over $300 billion of resources. Saudi Arabia has public investment fund. Norway has one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world. Have we really looked at these pockets which are far bigger than World Banks of this world? This is what I'm actually talking about. We need to reposition ourselves to tap these resources. As a business as usual, it might not work. Next slide, please. I have 2 more slides only to go. So basically the options, what we are looking at is, I've already mentioned many of those, but the main focus is that Pakistan's sovereign debt burden will not bring the required structural change in our GDP which we need for future. We need to diversify it and bring private capital and equity capital into that. We need innovation. We need better corporate governance. These projects, Excellency, for instance, I raise a large project of infrastructure. When it is done in a ministry, a private investor will honestly shy away. If it's a corporate, if it is structured in a manner that you have a very strong corporate structure overseeing that, which is sustainable over the years, that is where private capital starts talking to us. I'm doing in several countries and here smaller transactions. The moment we change the governance of a project, people start getting interested. So it's not only financial structuring of our projects. For instance, with no disrespect, a PC1 will not attract private capital. An investor information sheet will attract private capital. A good governance structure and financial modeling will attract private capital. A toll road can, service the debt automatically. We don't need to, put more burden on our budget or sovereign guarantees. This is what this whole effort is talking about. There are even multilateral resources, new SDRs, which are statutory depository receipts for SDGs floated globally. But in order to tap that pool of funding, this report has been aiming to equip Pakistan. Next slide, please. Now, this is in our roadshow. I don't know if it's readable in the sun. These are some of the companies which participated to look at Pakistan's portfolio, all the big names. There are Swiss funds, there are Bank of America, Citibanks, sovereign wealth funds. They looked at Pakistan's portfolio and showed interest. What we are trying to do is that you mobilize finance in a smaller manner, scale up investment solutions, but at the end of the day, the investment should create an impact. That is the key word. If the investment does not create an impact in the lives of the people, it becomes very hard to justify, an investment which asks for lower returns than pure commercial returns. Next slide, please. So, as I said, that, I would strongly urge, as mentioned by the resident representative of UNDP, that we should announce and go for a very small, focused project development facility, which will be cross-cutting. And I invite all the development partners to partner in that effort. And that facility will actually work hand in hand with line ministries, with projects, with NHAs, with CPEC authority, with BOI to structure few transactions. We don't aim very big. If we can structure $1 billion of investments and tap this capital, it will multiply automatically. Pakistan, within the structure of the government, will not be able to do that. It's a little strong word, but that is the assessment as somebody who has worked in this area for over 30 years. Already we have the task force which has been mentioned. I would strongly, Quraish, recommend you that in your efforts of economic diplomacy, this should be one of the key priorities to raise funds for development financing in Pakistan. And this facility, along with your office, will look at various avenues and tools how to do it. Because we are struggling on the how part. And that how part is very difficult to be done within the structure of the state, the way we are structured at this point in time. Last slide, please. Well, these are the objectives which actually pretty much I have already highlighted, that we will provide technical assistance for uplifting and restructuring of existing development projects which Pakistan has. That is the key role of this facility. We need to look at, a convening space between these investors, state, and the development partners so that we can work jointly, and that's what this facility will work on. It will also institutionalize the process. Once you do one or two transactions, people will start copying it, emulating it, and start getting trained. We need people with engineering background. We need people with investment banking background. The generalists in the government are in their comfort zone, will not be able to do it without that effort. Next slide, please. We had divided into two, didn't we? Okay, I would close. Once again, thank you for your patience. It's an opportune time for Pakistan to actually take a leadership role and set up this facility and do some transactions, which I can assure you are doable in less than a year's time if we put our house together. But tomorrow, I would say that Pakistan can even look at working along with countries like China to look at the regional countries as well, to handhold and partner, because financing is drying down. So with that message, I once again thank you for your patience, sitting in the sun. I'm sure lots of us perhaps will be more tanned after this talk. Thank you very much, very kind of you to be there.
Thank you so much for your insightful presentation. And now a short video on climate financing opportunities in Pakistan will be played.
What I loved about Pakistan was its wilderness, its mountains. I would make sure that we preserve this God-given beauty of our country. We started one of the most ambitious campaigns to plant 1 billion trees in 4 years. And against all odds, we did it. So when I became the Prime Minister, I resolved that we would plant 10 billion trees in Pakistan in the next 4 years.
International tourism moguls are taking note, dubbing Pakistan as one of the most attractive destinations, calling it the next big thing in international tourism.
Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to request the Honorable Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Makhdoom Shah Mahmood Qureshi, for his keynote address.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My tutors in the Foreign Office have given me a written text, but Harun Sharif, your presentation and the resident representative of UNDP, your remarks have provoked me to dump the written text and speak to you extempore. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the launch of this Sustainable Development Report 2021. I, as Foreign Minister, honestly believe that if we want to move forward, then we have to do things differently. Pakistan will not move ahead if we keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Mr. Sharif, what you said, and you recognized that in the last 2 years, under difficult COVID conditions, we did recover. And today the World Bank endorses that Pakistan has made I would say, a encouraging growth of 5.37%. I recall August 2018, when we came to office, all, and you know that, all our
macroeconomic indicators were pointing in the wrong direction. As foreign minister, I was traveling to Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, Beijing to plug the hole, the economic hole that was left of $20 billion. They helped, but it wasn't enough. We had to go to the IMF. And ladies and gentlemen, today, we are talking of sustainable development in a country that is still part of an IMF program. So let's first of all understand the objectives of an IMF program and the objectives of a sustainable development plan. They do not go hand in hand. I mean, I'm not an economist, but this is my, this is my feeling, this is my understanding. What would the IMF tell us? Manage your house better, and rightly so. Contain your fiscal deficit through austerity. Mobilize resources to bridge the deficit. And growth will come later. What we are talking of is sustainable growth. And we're linking sustainable growth to development. In your remarks, and I'm sure I haven't seen the report, but I will. I think the theme that I've picked up, I picked up 3 buzzwords: inclusive. I was writing them down while you were speaking. Sustainable, and how to do it. It's not that we haven't achieved growth in the past. We were touching 6% in the 80s. But our growth has been cyclical. We've gone up, we've gone down. And that is a clear indicator that the growth that we have achieved has not been sustainable. How do we make it sustainable is the question. And how do we maintain a consistent growth that would give us the investments in development, that would address the issues of alleviating poverty in Pakistan, job creation, so on and so forth. So, I think you said that 5.4% growth is good. Is it enough? The answer is no, sir. I agree with you. It's not enough. If a country like Pakistan wants sustainable development, we have to go higher than that. Now, how do we go higher than that? When, as you said, the development envelope is shrinking. There are too many claimants to international resources. And is Pakistan a high priority country? Not anymore. As Foreign Minister, I understand that. I understand how global priorities have changed. I also understand how alignments are taking place and realignments are taking place. And where does my country fit in? So, we have to be innovative. We have to think out of the box. And we have to be creative. That is what perhaps this report is saying, and that is what I am saying. Some of my colleagues, my diplomats sitting here, would bear me out. Since day one, I've been saying, if you want to achieve your foreign policy objectives, get your economic house in order. And gradually it seems my statements are gaining momentum. I can see today that the government's priority has changed. And today, we have launched a new national security policy which is focusing on economic security. It is multi-dimensional in its scope. It is talking of food security, water security, and I was seeing in the videos here the new hydel projects that are coming up. So, that is the new approach that Pakistan requires. And as you said, the Foreign Office, does it have a role? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. In fact, the lead role has to come from the Foreign Office. I am giving this challenge to the diplomats of Pakistan. You have to lead this country out of the quicksand that we are in. You have to pull this country out. You will do it. We will have to coordinate. We will have to synchronize. Get out of that mentality of working in silos and have a coordinated approach for sustainable development. That is what I'm articulating. That is what I'm arguing. And inshallah, I am optimistic that slowly but surely that mindset is gradually, it takes time for the Titanic to, move. But I think it is. I think it is. It will take time. We've set the tone. We have, I would say, sown the seed. It is germinating. It will require a consistent approach. And I'm confident with this consistent approach, we will attain that we will achieve the SDGs, and we are far, far away from Agenda 2030. It's not just us. Look at the entire developing world. We are nowhere near achieving the SDGs in 2030. That's the realistic assessment. How do we do it? Will, as you said, the World Bank and other financial institutions come to our rescue? Perhaps they will, perhaps not. Perhaps their priorities will be different. So how do we tap on finances available is the question. You hit the nail on the head. And that's why your talk provoked me to dump my written statement. I agree with you. There are innovative ways of doing things. And let me give you an example. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, we as a government have introduced the Universal Health Card in Pakistan. What is this health card? It basically is health insurance being provided by the government to every family of Pakistan. It's been launched and it's been rolled out. And you're seeing advertisements on the newspapers. What will it do? It will, in our assessment, protect people, a large section of our population, from going beneath the poverty line because of health conditions. जैसे उर्दू में कहते हैं ना, एक झटका बीमारी का गुर्बत की लकीर के नीचे ले जाएगा. How do we protect those people? This health card, any family can go to any public-private hospital that has been enrolled, show the card and get treated. Believe you me, it is a huge, it gives you sense of security. to the ordinary family, to the working, salaried people. It gives you security. But it's not just security and health. I'm just linking innovative ways of attracting finances. Now we have sustainable health indicators to achieve. They will only come through investments. As you said, the investment figures required are 16%. What we are doing is 0.2%. So, I mean, is there a match? It's a recipe of failure, what you have just pointed out. You're not achieving what you want to achieve. Let's face it. Let's call a spade a spade. With 0.2% in the play and 16% required, we are going nowhere. Let's not fool ourselves. We can produce these reports. They mean nothing. So, in order to fix that, we need innovative ways of doing it. The reason I'm giving you this example is there is an innovative way of doing it. How? When people know that the bulk of the population that resides in the rural areas where basic health units do not function, where rural health centers are there, doctors are paid but they're not available, medicines are being charged in the budget, a big percentage is pilfered, why would people go to those utilities? And they don't have the money to go to the private sector. They don't have the money to go to a private hospital. With this health card, the private sector will now know, they have the sustainability. They have the 10 lakh, fund available to them. So they will come to me. So private investment will start going into the health sector in the rural areas of Pakistan, where the bulk of the population of Pakistan lives. That's an innovative way of doing it. In your video, you were talking about solar energy. I have been arguing, and I will continue to argue, that one of our challenges is costly electricity. Every time you go to the IMF, they say, raise your tariffs. And we have, in the last 3 years, we have been continuously raising the tariff. People are suffering. You look at the electricity bills, people are not happy about it. But then we look at the gap, resource gap, the easy formula is raise the tariff. But in a society, when you keep raising a tariff, a stage comes, it becomes counterproductive. We are of the view that it will add, after a certain level, it will add to electricity theft. So, the people who are paying will be paying more, the government will not be collecting enough, and the resource gap will be there. So how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this rut is the question. And I'm suggesting to the government, to the Ministry of Energy, as a first step, convert all your electricity tubes to solar. It's doable. You get rid of the discos and VAPTA and the theft and the corruption that goes with it. So there has to be an innovative way of moving forward. And this is not Pakistan. This is the story of every developing country. Every developing country. You can, with varying degrees this is the story. So how do we get out of this situation? We need to tap on the private sector, finances. The private sector is there to make money. And if you make an offer that gives them a return, why shouldn't they come in? I mean, make an economically viable, attractive proposal. That is all. And they will invest. I mean, they're not part of the Salvation Army. They're profit-making organizations. So give them the profit and they'll come. That's the way, in my view, to go about it. I'm glad that you have put together a investor map for the first time in Pakistan. Thank you for doing so, and that I'm sure will be helpful. Moving on to one other point that you said, and that was governance. Corporate governance, or just good governance. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the challenges that every third world country is facing is corrupt leadership. I'm being very blunt. I know I'm being recorded. It might be going live, but I'll say what needs to be said. How do we overcome that? At least Prime Minister Imran Khan, PTI, the party I joined, I left this office. I resigned, and I left for a purpose, to break the mold. And if we are not going to break the mold, I've been an M&A before. I've been a minister before. Even if I become a foreign minister for the second time, what difference does it make? I can get returned again. How will the country benefit? The country will benefit if we change the mindset. The country will benefit if we can somehow introduce a system through which new leadership can rise. A more educated leadership can surface. The quality of debate in Parliament changes. Legislative delivery improves. Governance improves. And for that, we are setting into motion something unique. Perhaps many are not noticing, but when they do notice, inshallah, we would have done it. And that is a new local government system. People want improvement in service delivery. How will it come? It will only come if the grassroots are involved in sanitation, in drinking water, in schooling, in health supervision and monitoring. It will only happen then. And that will happen through locally elected representative leadership. Now, we've had that in the past. How will this be different? This time, what we are doing is, we are saying, let the people of, let's say, Lahore, a metropolitan town, let the people of Multan, let the people of Faisalabad, let the people of Gujranwala, Sialkot, Gujarat, directly elect their mayor or the chairman of the district council. When you have an electoral college of 300, 500, 600, whatever, and I'm saying that because I have been chairman district council. I've risen from the local governments. I've been part of a provincial setup. When you have, and I've been district Nazim, so I know how that system worked. When you have a limited electoral college, you can maneuver. Governments can maneuver to get results of their choice. But when you have the people directly voting, they will look at the quality of the person leading them. They would look at the face of the city. Who is my mayor? How educated is he? Can he understand my problems? Can he relate my problems to the powers that be? For example, we have, the UNDP sitting and talking to us on some sustainable development goal. Do I have the depth to understand what you've produced? Can I read what you've written? It's a question. Can I understand what you're saying? It's a question. That is why. And are my hands clean? Why am I in politics? To make a buck? To settle scores? For witch hunting? Or to give Pakistan better governance, better leadership? This country, full of potential, can move forward. That is what quality leadership will do. And hopefully, with this new system, we might lose seats, but so what? Politics is not a T20 match, it's a test match. You come back again and again and again. You switch from treasury benches to opposition benches. And when you're sitting on the opposition benches, you have a role to play. Believe you me, when I was, the last 5 years, when I was the deputy leader of the opposition, and representing my party, I had a great time sitting in the opposition benches. I wasn't worried. There was no NAB chasing me. Why would they chase me if my hands are clean? And why will I be afraid of them if I haven't, sort of soiled my hands? So, it is important. It is important to face the challenges are not new. The recipe is not new. The approach has to be new. That is what I'm trying to articulate. That is what I'm trying to sell in the Foreign Office of Pakistan. You as diplomats, as the face of Pakistan, as people representing the 114 missions abroad, have to provide that leadership. Have to connect with the diaspora. And they are very talented people, very talented Pakistanis living abroad. Tap them, bring them in. So, thank you. Thank you for helping us. Thank you, UNDP, for your policy advice. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you for your technical assistance. We require it. We need it. I've been asked to chair this task force. I want to assure you, and you, Harun Sharif, that as the chairman of this task force, I will try and build a partnership with you, with your organization, so that we benefit from you. You have a lot to offer. And inshallah, see collectively the public sector, the technocrats like you, and the private sector. How do we build this partnership to take Pakistan forward and to achieve the Agenda 2030? The public sector alone will not be able to do it.
but collectively, yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and I request you to please stay on stage. Thank you, sir. And with this, we move towards the official launch of the Pakistan Investment Report 2021, and I request Resident Representative Mr. Kunut Ozvi to please come on stage and present the report to the Foreign Minister.
I'm going to read it like Bible.
I would like you to please stay on stage. Thank you. And I would like Additional Secretary UN Mr. Nabil Munir, UNDP Senior Advisor Mr. Haroon Sharif, Chairman BOI Mr. Muhammad Asfar Ehsan, and Secretary BOI Ms. Farina Masar to please come on stage for a group picture. And I would request Chairman CPEC to please come on stage for the group picture. This brings us to the end of this segment, and I would like to invite all the distinguished guests for refreshments. Thank you.